Well, there's no better man to put all of these questions to than Hans Blix. He's a Swedish diplomat who was head of the International Atomic Energy Agency for 16 years, from 1981 to 1997. He was also the UN's chief weapons inspector during the search for alleged weapons of mass destruction in Iraq prior to the invasion in 2003. Well, I spoke to Hans Blix shortly before we came on air, and I began by asking him what he made of the latest nuclear testing by North Korea.
The development in Korea are worrisome. Long term, one can see two major threats. One would be that if the North Koreans continue on this line, it could provoke hardliners in Japan to say that they would need a nuclear weapon. I think Japan is on the whole, very much against nuclear weapons, but it could happen. And if they were to walk in that direction, then the whole temperature in the Far East will change, and relations with China will be difficult. So I think the Chinese at the present situation have a very good reasons to try to exert their pressure upon North Korea, a calibrated pressure, because if they go too far, then there might be a collapse and there will be terrible waves of refugees, and no one wants that. The other major risk at the present time in North Korea is if they would be trying to export any of their knowledge of the nuclear weapons to other countries. We have seen how they're exporting their missile capability, and we have also their suspicions at any rate that they were helping Syria to build a nuclear research reactor.
That's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. That's really interesting. Are you saying that Pyongyang is maybe advertising its wares to prospective countries? That's an incredible prospect, isn't it?
Well, advertising is perhaps it's a word have been used by others. I'm not sure that that is the purpose. I think a main purpose behind their conduct is to demonstrate to its own population that there is a strong government, and I think that they have actually an interest in provoking and in arranging for more tension around themselves, because if they can provoke the US and others to a bit more military action and movements around them, then they can tell their population that there you are, we need a strong military government, we need nuclear weapons, and we need to remain your masters, and you will have to continue sustain the misery in which you live. I think that may well be the moving factor behind the government's behavior.
Mr. Blix, in October 2007, you said to a Canadian broadcaster, if you'd allow me to quote you, you said, "There's time to negotiate with Iran and to carry out these negotiations in a sensible manner. I think they use too many sticks and they should use more carrots, just as they've done in the case of North Korea, where they are making some headway." Now, isn't this precisely what critics would point to show the price of what they would call appeasement? Since you made that statement 2 years ago, there's not been any headway. It's gotten worse with North Korea. Maybe the same will happen with Iran.
Well, there are some similarities, but there are also dissimilarities. In Iran today, you have an election campaign, and it is not a regime that is unsure that it will survive. There will be a continuation of the regime, and we don't know who will be the next president. That is not well, in North Korea, you may not know who will be the next president, but it's the military regime that certainly will maintain itself in power. I think the North Koreans are not worried about an American attack. The Iranians, when they started the nuclear program in the 1980s, could have very well have been worried about Iraq. And you remember in 1981, it was Israelis bombed the Osirak reactor on the suspicions that Saddam wanted to go in the direction of weapons. Now, Iranians might well have had the same suspicions. But today, Iraq is not a threat to them, nor is Pakistan or Afghanistan or Turkey. But they might be worried about the United States with the aircraft carriers in the Gulf. And therefore, I think it would have been rational for the US to do the same to Iran as they've done to North Korea, and say that if you stop your enrichment program, we are willing to offer you guarantees against attack from the outside and subversion from the inside. That would be one important element.
Has the policy been wrong towards Iran in recent years with regards to the nuclear issue?
Yes, I think it has been a very mistaken policy, and I think the Bush administration bears a good deal of responsibility. They said to the Iranians that if you suspend the enrichment, then we will dignify you by sitting down together with you and talk and tell you what we might offer you. And the Iranians were not all that interested to sit down, so they just waited and built more centrifuges. And now we find it's the other side that is more eager to sit down and talk. And I think they should. And I think the Obama administration has shown a good deal of sense in this. First of all, they treated Iran not as an axis of evil, but part of that, but they rather treated them with some courtesy, which
Blix,
I think, whatever you think of their regime, is desirable.
Talking about different policies to different nuclear-powered countries, North Korea basically violated the non-proliferation treaty and pulled out of it. 3 other countries that haven't signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, India, Pakistan, and Israel, face very little criticism despite having nuclear weapons. Do we all close our eyes and not worry about them just because they are strong US allies?
No, I think that it's interesting at the recent preparatory meeting of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in New York, the US administration actually came out and said that they hoped and wished that all states should join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, implying that India, Pakistan and Israel should also join as non-nuclear weapon states. Now, that startled a lot of people, but I think that and it was a bit amazing because it's not realistic at the moment. But on the other hand, I think it indicates that the Obama administration has an aim to move the whole world away from nuclear weapons. And they are starting in a modest way with the talks with the Russians, etc.
Mr. Blix, you felt vindicated over the past 6 years after you told the world that the Iraq WMD threat was exaggerated for political purposes. We subsequently found out that there weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And at the time, you were very angry, and you're still angry now. You said that members in the Bush administration, quote, planted nasty things in the media about you to smear your reputation. With the attention nowadays on Iran, do you think something similar is happening to the man who succeeded you at the IAEA, Mohammed al-Baradei?
Well, Mohammed is on his way out. They are about to select a successor. I think he has stood his ground in a very difficult matter. You see, the Bush administration, at any rate, I think they wanted people like Mohammed and myself at the top of international organizations to be secretaries, and the governments decide. And they should just put the papers before them, prepare the meetings. But I don't think that's what the world expects. The world expects of a Secretary General of the UN or Director General of the IAEA also to try to be impartial, to try to state things objectively. And I think these directors, they will have to live up to that. I think Mohammed has. As a question of judgment, how far do you go? How plainly do you speak, etc., and what words do you use? But I think Mohammed has stood his ground very well. He's an excellent lawyer, and I think he has good political judgment, and I think the Bush administration was very unfair to him.
Hans Blix.